and we already have people watching us live here on the chat. Welcome aboard, everyone, to another Ask Me Anything session with the one and only Tom Grimes.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're all staying safe in the heat that seems to be affecting Europe. It's coming to the US. It's been insane. So stay healthy, stay cool.
Yeah, it's been very, very hot. I'm currently in the southern hemisphere, so like to me, it's 23 degrees, which is somewhat around 70-ish for the Americans. So yeah, we're not experiencing that heat wave here, but I see a lot of people having a lot of serious troubles with the heat. So let's stay healthy, everybody. So Tom, again, we're here for another Ask Me Anything sessions. Of course, I do have a lot of questions already, but the chat is open to anyone. If you guys who are watching us live want to ask anything, that's kind of in the name, right? Ask Me Anything, so you can ask anything. Tom is here to answer to your questions. I wouldn't ask him personal questions because I don't think it's appropriate at this point. But who knows? Maybe by the end of the session, you might be able to ask something.
So, Thomas, it's fun to know about the people. The people that make the software, or even if you're a visualizer, people might want to know about you as a person because, I don't know, there's an old saying that nobody does business with a business. People do business with people. And so if you want to ask personal questions, I mean, if it gets too personal, I'll tell you. But otherwise, feel free if you want to know more about the person as well as the product in the industry.
Yeah, well, of course. So I want to ask one question already. Like, let's address the elephant in the room, right? Let's talk about, drum roll, AI. We were having a conversation, so you guys know, before we started broadcasting this, we were having a conversation on AI in general, where this is going, where is that, and so on. So I wanted to start this by asking you, Tom, like, where do you think that AI, like tools in general, where they provide like the most value in workflow, like, or in a clearer way, why should people bother using AI at this point?
Yeah. Now, it's obviously a huge topic, and there's a lot to cover. So, I mean, obviously, we won't be covering it all today. The first thing I will say is I don't believe AI is going to kill traditional visualization. Because AI still lacks a certain amount of control, it lacks a certain amount of specificity, and there are some clients and some projects where that's not just nice to have, it's critical. It has to be exactly this material, it has to look exactly like that, it has to look the same in every shot. If there's a marble vein from one angle, you want to see the same vein in the marble from another. Sometimes that is everything. So AI, to me, whether it's useful is when it becomes complementary. For example, probably the best thing I can say is the best use I've seen of AI. Somebody built a scene 3ds Max, and they used Marvelous Designer to give the cloth that was these hanging cloth shape, and they did these absolutely gorgeous hero renders in Corona. And then they took it to, I believe it was Korea they were using to animate it. But, and people said, well, why did you even bother using Marvelous Designer? And he was like, well, even though the image is static, the fact that it's realistically wrinkled and folded and hanging under the weight of gravity gives that control over the AI result. And the fact he had done everything, all the textures, all the lighting, and it was absolutely beautiful. And then he rendered these animations from these 5 or 6 hero shots and turns each one into a short video clip. And the result was incredible because he basically constrained the AI. It's like try and write a prompt. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So rather than write a 1,000-word prompt, give it a really good picture. And the better the picture, you could just give it a grayscale. You could just give it some cubes and say these are skyscrapers. But the more detail you put into your thing you're feeding into AI, the more control you have over what AI will produce to avoid it looking the same as what everybody else will come out with if they use AI, to avoid AI hallucinating things and straying away from what you need. And so that's where I see AI is useful. So in combination with, I mean, the Hero renders were beautiful. They were absolutely outstanding Hero renders, and you'd say that over the last 5, 6 years, if you saw those any time over the last 5, 6 years, they'd blow you away. So obviously he hadn't quit, building the scene in Max and texturing it and lighting it and using Corona to get this beautiful render. And I've seen another example that was similar that used Vintage to generate some animations, and then they used AI to enhance it and help it look more realistic. And again, by having this great input where you're basically limiting what AI does, to me, that gives the best results from AI. And the other strong feature is visualization, ideation, where you want to ask the client, how about this? But obviously, you don't want to spend, 4 hours or 10 hours building it in Max just for them to go, no, we don't like it. And so AI can be handy there, where you build just enough in Max, C4D, whatever your DCC is, just enough to get things going. Then you use AI, and then you can say to the client, how about this? And they can go, nah. And this includes video, because that takes longest to render by traditional means, animations. And you can do quick animations and go, I was thinking this kind of a path or this kind of an animation. And the client can tell you, no. And then you can go back to 3D and construct it as you normally would. Even if you construct just a hero shot and stop, and then use AI to do turn it into an animation. But to me, this sort of quick ideation is very useful, because then when you start putting in the work, it's in the right direction, then the client has already signed off on that. And that's easier than trying to tell the client in words, I have this idea where, a plane will fly over, and then we can, it's just nice. If they can see it, they can approve it or not. So that's the two places I see it. And also the standard one is improving people, because we all know that 3D people, no matter how good your model, tends not to look great in renderings. And people either in paint, after they've done the render in paint in a person, or they simply get it to enhance. They use a 3D model, which gives you control over the size, the scale, the positioning, the pose, and then they have AI make it look more realistic. And these things, to me, are are what the best uses of AI. None of them, by the way, involve throwing out traditional rendering. It's when you join them together, you get the strongest force. Either one on its own, 3D, the people may look plasticky. AI, it's going to be all over the place, and you won't have as much control over it. But when you mesh them together, you can actually get something useful. And so that's my take on it.
Yes. So basically, what you're saying is that you still should be doing your thing and just use AI as an aid, so your thing gets better.
Your thing gets better. Right. And also, I think there's a lot of uncertainty about where AI will go. I know basically the company's telling you that, oh yeah, just wait till next week and AI will do it all. You won't need to do a thing. Are the people who are selling you the tokens? They make money by telling people that. That's their marketing pitch. And the truth is, we don't really know. And there's all sorts of things happening in the world where, in America, local communities are pushing back against the building of data centers. This could mean that these companies don't get to scale as much as they think they will if data centers can't get built. We're seeing things like the class action lawsuit against the memory providers. I have no idea how that's going to play out, but I mean, it could reduce the amount of memory available to data centers and AI companies. Again, this could slow the scaling of the models. The models aren't financially viable at the moment. If you look at which companies making AI actually make a profit, have a viable business model, only NVIDIA actually make money out of AI. And the other companies really haven't. This could mean AI prices shoot up astronomically. It doesn't mean they will, but they could. It could mean some AI companies close down. We have no idea what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty, so I think it's a bad idea to place everything on AI. This is why I don't think it's going to kill off traditional visualization and traditional workflows and tools, because we just don't know what's going to be like in 2 years or 3 years. It could indeed, as people say, become so much better that wow, it really is a replacement for everything, or it might not. And and all technology to me has a we were discussing this. It has like a curve. It starts off growing very rapidly, but your cell phone today is not a quantum leap over the cell phone you had in 2020 or 2019. Whereas the cell phone in 2019 was a quantum leap over your cell phone in 2010. And this is true of all technology. It's not unique to digital devices. It starts off with enormous growth. Every week or month or year brings massive improvements, but this does taper off. And this might happen with AI. It might not. Again, maybe whole new models and a whole new system will come out that's not the same as the current LLMs and similar. But we don't know. And so I think it's not a good time to bet your everything that AI will be able to do everything. And I think, again, fusing the two, well, I mean, let's say AI disappears, you've still got beautiful hero renders and you can still do beautiful animations, even if that happens. In the meantime, right now, today, with what AI can do, you can get amazing results with that fusion. And that's my take.
Yeah, totally. And I would say you're totally right. And one thing that while you were speaking, you remind me of the Vision Pro thing. Like the technology is amazing. It's incredible. Like I used it, I tested it. It's awesome. It's so much better than my Quest 3. But I kind of don't need it, and it's too expensive for me to just buy it. So I ended up not buying one. And I think that we are in that stage with AI that people think it's so cool that they would love to have one like a Vision Pro
Yes.
until it gets too expensive or
Yeah.
not that useful, and they'll be like, you know what, we don't need that. And I actually saw, I think Chris posted something about that on his podcast, on the CG Garage podcast, that this film, that in the credits they said no AI, no generative AI was used. So like people being like, you know what, we see the value in this, so like not too much or too little. We had to find a middle ground here. And speaking of middle grounds, let me ask you something. Like we do have, like for Chaos products, we do have Varus, and it works pretty well to do what you just mentioned, like to enhance your stuff, do things that like, let's make this better. So what would you recommend as a workflow if you're working with Corona, of course, and Varus? Like how do you use that specific tool with Corona so you can get the best results?
Yeah, and I think this is, the coronavirus, all introduced in Corona 15, which only came out on May the 27th, so just over a month ago. The focus is very much on headphones really do crazy things with your hair. Very much focuses on this kind of thing I've been describing. So, I mean, a workflow that I would see myself using as a freelancer if I were back in that role, which I was 10, 12 years ago. I would do a quick mock-up in Max, probably do a grayscale render, probably put some lighting in there. You don't have to, you could just go with flat, but I'd probably do a little bit of lighting just to sort of drive things along. Very quick. I would then send that render it in Corona for whatever it is, 6 seconds, send it to VMS, give it a prompt or even a reference image to fill it out as a scene, which I would then use Chaos Collaboration, which is a great feature. I would send that image to the client so they could comment on it, and we'd have this rapid ideation back and forth. And then I'd be, okay, now we have established what we want, what direction we want to go in. Is it moody? Is it overcast? Is it summer? Is it winter? And then I'd go back into Max and start doing what I always did, modeling things out based on having approved this direction through this quick iteration of ideations with the client. And then I'd build it out to be a beautiful hero shot. And from there, I would use AI to enhance people in particular. And I probably would start with a 3D model and enhance it rather than in-paint the person. Personally, I like the ability to, pose a figure so that you control the AI and so that you can make sure your person is correct to scale in the scene, as we do in 3D. And then take that hero image and I'd use Veras and AI to enhance the person first, but then I'd also use it to, at the very least, test different angles, because Veras can now actually let you move the camera a little bit, just to see if there's a better angle, a better look. I'd use Veras to do these short animation clips, which I would stitch together into, because most animation in ArcViz, and I'm focused here in ArcViz, but even Product Viz, is pretty slow camera movements that are basically letting you explore the scene or explore the product. And if you have a really good hero shot from traditional rendering, AI can do a pretty good job at turning those into video. And basically, it lets you expand what you offer the client. It might be normally I wouldn't offer them video, but now I can. And it might be that this happens 2 months after the finishing the 5 hero shots. And they come back and I can say, oh, hey, how about this? How about I do you a 20-second, 30-second video and we can take it from the hero shots. And so that's where I see it. So it's both at the start where we have ideation and then at the end to enhance and then to come up with some variations, which we may come back and redo in the DCC, or maybe the variations in AI is good enough because you have the solid hero shot that the client wants when everything is specific. And then for a short video, maybe they don't need as much precision in every single frame. So you're driving it from you can also do first frame, last frame in Veras to constrain it even more. And that's how I would use it. So that's where I see AI slotting in, working alongside, Corona. And that's why I was super pleased to see Veras introduced to something that's very easy to get to from Corona. And I think we'll see big improvements in Veras as well over the next 6 months. It's continually moving. It doesn't have to wait. The beauty is it doesn't have to wait for a Corona update to get better.
Yeah, I just remembered of one occasion, like people often think that like AI means everything is going to be like just ready like that with no work whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
So we have iterations, we have corrections, we have a bunch of stuff that I know that, by the way, Veras does very well. Like you can select objects and change things, which is pretty nice. And that reminded me of this situation where I was like placing AI people in an image, and this one particular woman, like she didn't have her shoes on for whatever reason. Really, like she looked really cool. Her pose, like the lighting, everything was so cool. But she was barefoot. Like, why is that? And then I actually spent, I would say, 15 minutes trying to correct that to create a believable shoe to her, but because it was not like a beach setting or whatever. Like she was supposed to be wearing shoes. So like some people just I think this is one of the most dangerous parts of AI, really, like when people leave it to AI. So AI does everything, they're not paying attention, and then you have like 3-eyed people, or you have like naked people or whatever, because you're not paying attention to whatever AI is doing. And let's face it, AI doesn't know that that person is like naked or whatever, and that doesn't look good because of many reasons. Right?
Yeah, it has no sense of context. And I think one thing I like to say is faster isn't always better. You can put your chicken in the oven at, I don't know, 300 Fahrenheit for 6 hours and have a lovely chicken. And don't please cook your chicken based on that. I'm just pulling numbers out there. But if you put the chicken in at 900 Fahrenheit does not mean to say you can cook it for 2 hours and end up with a beautiful chicken. You'll end up with totally burned on the outside, totally raw on the inside, and it's completely inedible. Faster is not always better. And this is the thing, if you are working through a scene, and this did come up at EUE when I was talking to artists, and one of them had a very good point that as you are building the scene in your DCC, you sometimes get brand new ideas because you are positioning everything one by one, because you're involved in the process. Whereas if AI just spits out the finished thing, there isn't that time to think and go, oh, wait a minute, I've just got a fantastic new way that we could actually present this. Because the whole process has gone so fast, you don't have the room for that kind of time for your brain to just do what brains do and be creative. And so faster isn't always better. And also more isn't always better. I think this is a big question overall for AI art outside of art viz and product viz, outside of what people use our products for. Just making movies in general. The question is more movies actually better? Isn't it just harder to find the ones that are good because there's now such a mass of stuff to wade through? And this is already happening with music as well. It's the AI generated music. Sure, it's letting more people make music, and music can be made faster. But all it means is it's harder to find the good stuff, because when you go and browse, we've seen it with games on Steam, of course, where you get a lot of these $3.99 rubbish games, and it's hard to find. Maybe there is a $3.99 game that's good, but trying to find it in amongst the massive games. And this is not AI. This has been going on for years. But I think AI can exacerbate that problem in certain fields. And so, faster isn't always better. More isn't always better. Sometimes care, deliberateness, thoughtfulness can actually make for a better product. And sometimes that counts. Some people, like there are things on Fiverr. I did do jobs on Fiverr when I was freelancing. And they don't really want anything fancy. Good enough, and okay, I can see the mistakes, but it's fine because I only want to pay $5. But is that really the kind of work you want to be doing, or don't you want to find those clients who do care and they require you to have the workflow that lets you meet their needs for something that actually has meaning and significance?
Yeah, and as you said, like for video games, for example, people are happy to wait 13 years for GTA 6. Like, if anyone said, like, you know what, we did GTA 6 in like 1 year using AI,
Yep.
people would be like, no way, this is gonna be crappy. So like,
and this is also something that's an unknown. And you mentioned it earlier, where the movie said no AI in its credits, and there's actually a pushback from the public on did you use AI, and this is happening across the board. It's seen. Steam has just said that any game that uses AI has to say it uses AI and say what it used it for. And Epic Games have said, oh, that's really unfair. It's going to disadvantage people who use AI, because the statistics so far show that a game that says it uses AI makes 40 to 50% less sales than one that didn't use AI. But that's because people don't want to buy games that use AI. And there's a pushback. And there's a guy who wanted to make a movie using AI, and there's a big pushback. And so he changed his mind. He stopped using AI. Now, that's relevant to us because when we make visuals, let's say ArtViz, and I make a visual for a client, that client isn't actually the end user. They are going to take that to try and sell the $15 million apartment in New York to people. Okay, I say regular people, but I guess regular people aren't buying $15 million apartments. But you might be designing an office space, and you're selling your office space to ordinary businesses. And so ultimately, the public is the end customer for what we as ArtViz people create our product as. And if they don't like it, if they can tell it's AI and there's a pushback against the AI, they will be turned off of your product. And the thing I've heard people say is, if you don't believe in your product enough to spend time and money getting proper stuff made, why should I care enough about your product to spend time and money buying it and using it? If you don't believe in your car or your toothbrush or your office block enough to commit to having somebody build it for you, if you don't care enough to have somebody sit and speak in your AMA, but you get an AI Tom Grimes come on and answer your questions. If Tom Grimes doesn't care enough to spend the time talking to me, why should I care about your product? And this pushback, I don't know how it will play out again, but we may find that it reduces the desire for AI to be in everything. And there would be a benefit where you can either minimize the use of AI to a point where people say, oh, you enhance the person, that's fine. Or where you can actually fall back on, there is absolutely no AI in this whatsoever.
I would say it's a matter of perceived value anyway.
Yes.
Like
yes.
how people perceive the value in that. As I said, like, I enhanced people. That's cool because now people look better than they did.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. I don't care how you did it. But the thing is, if like I saw something on LinkedIn the other day, like I think it was an airport expansion or whatever, that the image was completely AI, and people were like, "What the hell is that?" Like they didn't even fix the signs. Like they had this AI thing that
Squiggle
AI does
language.
text, yeah, and they're like, "Dude, really? You couldn't even be bothered to fix the actual signs?" So that's how important you think this is to us, or how important you think we are, because we're the ones seeing this. So I think we'll still get there somehow. Like we'll still understand how we should use it. But I would like to shift our gears a bit and talk about, specifically about Corona, because after all, this is our Corona session, right? And we have a question from someone you might know. About Corona GPU. Martin asks, when?
Never is the answer. This has always been an answer for the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. The reason being is that GPU rendering works in a completely different way. So first of all, the conversion to GPU would be massive. We'd pretty much have to put all Corona development on hold and do nothing but convert it for like a year, possibly even 2. And we don't think that's fair to our existing customers, that you wouldn't see a single Corona enhancement for an extended period of time. And then the other thing is, people are expecting it to look exactly the same as Corona. That's what they think. They say Corona GPU. What they really mean is, I'd love Corona, and my 1 hour render could be done in 5 seconds. But that's not what happens. You have to trade off the way the algorithm works, because the actual structure of the chips are different. CPUs are really good at branching processes, basically. And what is ray tracing but a branching process? You fire an array, it hits a surface, it spawns other arrays, which hit other surfaces, which branch. And CPUs are really good at doing that. Whereas GPUs are really good at doing one thing a million times. It's one very small thing, and they do it a million times across these million little processors. But they're not so good at this kind of branching logic, which is why ray tracing is only quite recent in GPU and isn't going to give the same results as a CPU. So people wouldn't get what they want anyway. Even if we spent 2 years developing it, they'd end up going, wait a minute, this doesn't look exactly the same as Corona used to look. And so we don't think people would be satisfied. And so we don't plan on doing a Corona GPU. We have Vantage. If you want real-time ray tracing, Vantage is there, and we are going to be strengthening the export from Corona to Vantage as part of 16. It's going to be a big focus. There are some Corona materials that could be converted better. And this is what I mean, it has to be converted because the structure of these programs, the render engines are different. But we will make it so that it'll be much better when you hit export to Vantage or use Live Link to render an animation. The Vantage result will be much closer to the Corona result because we'll have converted all the Corona stuff better. We have an extra challenge because Vantage effectively uses V-Ray materials. So for V-Ray, they just send it across exactly as it is, and Vantage can do it. But Corona has its own materials, and we have to convert them into V-Ray first before we send them to Vantage. And conversion, obviously, is difficult. You maybe don't have all the same parameters, or maybe they mean something a little bit different. So the conversion step is an extra challenge that we face compared to V-Ray, which I think is why if you see V-Ray to Vantage results, the much better than what Corona does today, but we can get much closer, and we plan on doing that. So yeah, if you want GPU rendering, you want the speed, but you want ray tracing, then Vantage is the solution that we see. And then you have the best of both worlds. You have your CPU on Corona for when you want that. You can send it over to GPU when you want to take advantage of GPU speed through Vantage. And that's a lot easier than trying to rewrite Corona itself as GPU, and I think gives much better results.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, V-Ray users are probably used to this because V-Ray GPU and V-Ray CPU have been around for ages, and we are all used to the fact that the results are not exactly the same. Because we know that maybe Corona users are not aware of that yet because they didn't have that kind of experience with their software, and even with I mean, I love Vantage from the bottom of my heart. I really do. I told Vlado a couple of weeks ago that when I first saw the technology, it was called Lavina back then. I was like, oh my god! Like I was nerding out completely. And it took long enough so Vantage can be now part of a viewport in real time. So I think that people should know what to expect from the tool, and in this case, you're completely clear on that. Like Corona has been always a CPU renderer, which means that there needs to be conversion so it can speak GPU language.
Yes.
A lot of things get lost in translation. I used to joke about it, say that I'm much funnier and a much better person in Portuguese than I am in English, even if I do speak relatively well the language. Like, but some translations always end up happening. So, like, it makes sense. But speaking of translations and Corona, one of the updates that I saw that I think was really cool, but like really, really cool, was the new things you can do with Gaussian splats.
Yes.
So that now, like, because Gaussian splats is something that I saw it coming from a long way, and I was like, dude, this is going to be so incredible when it finally gets here. And it's closer than ever, I'd say.
I would agree. So with Corona, when we first introduced support for Gaussian splats, we did something that's a little bit different. We put the tone mapping in the splat. So that's pretty clever because you can then start to adjust how the splat looks. And what we extended things for Corona 15 is a splat can now bounce GI light into the actual 3D objects. Now, it's not the same as relighting the splat. Let's just be clear on that. But let's say you have an interior that you've created a Gaussian splat of. Previously, if you put a person in there, the splat, if you put a light source in there, the light wouldn't bounce off the splat onto the person and give you the kind of shading you see in real world from bounced light. Now it will in 15. You can enable Gaussian splats to bounce GI. And that makes a big difference to be able to blend. And it doesn't matter whether it's an exterior splat or an interior splat. In the case of an exterior splat, it might bounce light onto a car that's an actual 3D object, a traditional polygon 3D object, because a splat is an actual 3D object. Now, what we'll research for 16, we know V-Ray has relighting the splats, so we're going to see if we can do that too. And the R&D department, which is outside of being Vive or Corona specific, are looking into several things about splats. We see it as a very interesting technology. And I'm not going to say any more because it's not my place to talk about exactly what R&D are doing, but we do see splats as useful. So that's the things that we want to focus on for Corona. Can we relight the splats? The other thing we want to do is the SPC4 is a recent new Gaussian splat file format. Replaces, goes alongside PLY. It's an alternative to the .ply. And the SPC4 is just smaller and lighter. They call it like the JPEG of Gaussian splats. So you can imagine that if, you can think of the file size differences between a 32-bit PNG and an 8-bit JPEG. There's some trade-off in quality, but the file sizes are very much lighter. And so we should have SPC4 support in 16 where you can load those instead of only .plys. You'll still be able to load plys. So, we do see splats as very important. So that's where we are now. You have tone mapping on the splat. You have the ability for the splat to bounce GI. And then hopefully in the next version, we'll have at least some relighting. Now, development is always an uncertain path until you start actually trying to do it. You don't know whether it's possible. So please don't, 16 should be planned for end of October. So if it comes out in the end of October and the relighting isn't, don't grab your pitchforks and come running at me. It's not a promise. It's just something we want to look into and we hope to have happen. And so, I want to share that in the interest of transparency. It's always a risk. If you share things, people get mad if you find out you couldn't do it in the timescale you planned. But if you don't share it, then people don't know what's coming. So I always choose to go on the side of let's share it and hope people understand that development is not a fixed path. You can discover things as you go along that can make things impossible that you thought were doable within the time frame. So, don't come at me with pitchforks and flaming torches and all the rest of it. But hopefully splats are important and we will continue to see other developments as well as those. But that's our plan for across the next 6 months at least.
And what would you say would be like the best uses for Gaussian splats within a Corona render? Because we see people trying to do all sorts of crazy stuff with Gaussian splats. Some people are actually trying to create like full objects that behave like the actual ones or look like the actual ones, but they are inserted as Gaussian splats, so we could make it somewhat more realistic and maybe, I don't know, lighter in a way. So what would you use Gaussian splats right now in Corona specifically?
Yep, my take on splats is the best use as of today is as surrounding environments. Let's say you have a building and it's going to go at a certain place in a certain street. If you can get a Gaussian splat of that street, which you may have to go down there yourself with a camera to generate the source content. You may have to fly a drone if it's permissible, because drone obviously you have to be careful where you fly them and make sure you have the right permits and the right licenses or whatever. Depends on where you are. But if you can do that, you can get a really realistic environment that's fully 3D. So you're not talking about just an HDMI dome, which is what we're all used to in traditional rendering. But it's actually 3D, and you can put your building in there. Your building would be, a model, the polygon model that you create in Max or C4D or whatever. And then you can go from any angle. You can bench light off. If there's a piece of grass that your building is sitting on, the green from the grass will now bounce onto the building. That's the GI bouncing that we've introduced. So to me, they're great for environments and settings. The same with the interior of a room. If you can capture the interior of a room and you want to place furniture objects inside it, that makes sense as well. To me, at the minute, it makes a little less sense to capture objects and then place them inside an actual 3D environment. So the environment is polygon modeled, but the object is a splat. I don't know. I don't think that works quite so well yet. We'll see how splats advance. But I think, to me, the ideal is using it as the surrounding environment. So you get accurate reflections, shadows, light bounces. You can change angle, and it all still makes sense with proper parallax and everything. All the stuff you don't get from a HDRI that's really just a dome around the scene. And that's where I think it's most beneficial.
Yeah, and reflection is something that people underestimate a lot in exteriors.
Yes.
Like, they have this HDR dome and they think that it looks good enough, and then they realize they're seeing the same tree like facing the building in so many ways, and it's still the front of the of the tree. It's like I think it's a very interesting substitute for example, having actual geometry, like when you have to create like 2 or 3 blocks surrounding your building, so the reflections and even the shadows look good. Because that's something that the first time I used Gaussian splats in an image, I was very pleased with seeing that I could actually get some decent shadows out of Gaussian splats, because they make like the world of difference. Really, there was a lot of trees there, and so when I placed cars in the streets, they looked correct because they were reflecting the actual stuff, and they were being like shadowed or shaded by the actual trees and so on. So it's a very interesting use for Gaussian splats, and I can see this technology moving further in usage for us. And speaking of usage, I have one weird question actually. Like right right now, people are doing all sorts of things with with 3D, with AI, with everything. Like it seems like imagination is basically the only limit people can face right now. For you, what's the most surprising way people have been using Corona specifically? Like things that you guys as developers would be like, can they do that? Is he allowed to do that with Corona? Because we never thought of that. Because I've seen people doing some crazy stuff with renderers in general, and specifically with Corona. Do you have something that you remember that people are like, oh yeah, this guy's crazy?
It's not. It's not really that crazy a use, I guess. It was just surprising to me, given how we've been very ArcViz focused. That's always been the point of Corona. We had lots of ArcViz companies join us during Alpha to tell us what they wanted to see, and equally what they didn't want to see. Hide that, take it away, we don't need it. So one of the coolest and most surprising uses, although it's not like crazy, what it was a guy named Mike Hill, and I don't know if he still uses Corona. This was at least 6-7 years ago. He used Corona for concept art, and it was concept art for Blade Runner 2049 and concept art for Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. And obviously, you don't think of Corona in the movies, and you don't think of Corona in the game. Now, of course, the art never was in the game. The Corona render wasn't in the movie, and the Corona render wasn't in the game. But it was the design that then was taken to build the VFX from that design. Also, one of the Batmobiles, Ash Thorpe, did work on that. And I always find that super cool and kind of surprising because, as I say, it's not my instant thought for Corona is doing these kind of concept art, very detailed concept art. Mark Hill's work is fantastic. And I will have to reach out to him again just to see if he still uses Corona and what he's been up to lately. But that to me was like, took me by surprise when I discovered it. Because I was like, oh, I love your work. And he's like, oh, yes, it's Corona. I love Corona. And I was like, what? Really? And I went on his profile, and like a lot of the Call of Duty says, I would never imagine Corona having part to play in the development of Call of Duty. It's like, so, but it's not crazy. It's not like somebody's done something really weird with it. But to me, that's the most surprising one and the most pleasurable. I was super pleased to hear how it was being used. Have you seen any?
Yeah, to be honest, like I've always been a V-Ray guy, and I remember the first time I was like, my jaw was on the floor, was when I saw The Third and the Seventh by Alex Roman.
Oh yes,
because it was the moment you can do that. Like it's not even if you think it's not an alien technology, right? Like he was just
Right.
doing some really cool stuff. But to me, it was like, oh my god, you can actually do that with the render, like 3ds Max, and in that case, V-Ray, I don't know, like 3.4, whatever. Like it's like almost 20 years ago. I was like, man, this is so sick.
I've
And I
seen
think
some
that
stuff in a show reel. I think it was Recent Spaces, and they're like, "Oh yeah, our show reel uses Corona," and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. What about the weird abstract stuff? How did you do that?" And like, "Oh, that's Corona too." And that I was like, "What?" And it's just where they have these weird flowing lights and stuff that I just wouldn't have expected. Absolutely nothing concrete about it. It was all very
Mhm.
abstract. It was the in between transition shots that they've done. I was like, wait, oh, really? All Corona? Okay. Because I was like, we have to, I want to be sure nobody gets confused. Tell me which bits to say this wasn't Corona. No, the whole thing. And I was like, oh, okay.
And that goes to show that sometimes we are so concerned about new tools, new things that come to a
Right.
software, any software, right? AI included, if you want, that we forget that we can do some serious stuff with the existing tools already. It's just a matter of actually coming up with, I'd say, creative ways to use those
Mm-hmm.
tools. And speaking of new features, uh, I think this is the question people were looking forward the most. Uh, what's next for Corona?
Well, I can tell you that, as I have already mentioned, that a better connection to Vantage is one thing. And then I look into, can we do relighting for Gaussian splats? We're considering that. Now, there's a lot of other things we've got on the table that we are not sure about yet. It's been a super busy time since the release of 15, and there's been very little time to sit down and actually map out some of the more, you'd call them smaller, but more specific things that will be going into Corona. We've had the quarterly planning. I was over at EUE in Utrecht, and then after the release in EUE, and done some work on defining how the academy can go. I took a long weekend, and so I'm actually behind. This is also the same reason why I haven't released yet, and this is my fault, the complete list of all changes in Corona 15, because we like to, I mean, the blog will tell you the big items, but we like to tell you every little item, including every bug fix. And I'm still getting that list put together. That is on me. And then the same way, we haven't totally nailed down exactly what will be in 16 just yet. So I don't have a massive amount of news to share with you. There will be implementation of what's called the AI assistant, and this will basically just be a helpful thing. It's not there to do image generation or anything for you, but it was first of all, it might be an access point to how do I use the I don't know new glints in the physical material, and it'll give you some advice or guide you to the correct documentation without you having to go off and start searching the web. It will have a lot of flexibility in it too. It will have something called the mood match, should be in there. And this is where you can say, how do I make my render look kind of like this one? Give it a reference image, and it will pick an HDRI sky from Cosmos that matches and sets orientation, or it'll set parameters for the physical sky that will kind of match the look and feel. So is it cloudy and overcast? Is it bright and sunny? So it'll try and set those up for you in the scene. Again, it's to give you a starting point. You can go ahead and tweak it, of course, after that. It'll also look to create a LUT, or pick a LUT that will give the similar kind of color grade feel to your image. And this is just to try and speed things along for you. You've now got an HDRI. You can still tweak it, the brightness, you can rotate it. Physical sky, you can tweak the parameters yourself, but at least you've got a starting point rather than just, loading a default physical sun and sky and then having to start from scratch. It'll have done its best to set the parameters up in a way that matches what you want. So that'll be coming along in 16. And then we have lots of other things that, to avoid complete disappointment, because I haven't spoken with the devs about how many we can fit in and how many we can't. I'm not going to mention them because they're even more speculative than normal. But give me a week or two and I'll update the public roadmap, because we do like to have a public roadmap, and I'll update things on there, and I'll tell you a bit more about what we have planned. I don't mean to be secretive, but it's just everything's been so busy. We haven't
I was going
nailed
to
it
say
down.
mysterious.
Yeah. Ooh, it's a mystery.
Ooh.
But no, it's just things have been a bit wild and crazy. And it's only been a month since the release. Normally, I like to have this done like 1 or 2 weeks after release. Also, we wanted to get through the hotfix, which is out, by the way. 15 hotfix 1 came out, I think it was last week. So it's got a lot of bug fixes to 15. So it's a recommended update. Do be sure to download and install that if you're using 15. Update to 15 hotfix 1, please. But obviously for the devs, that was the big focus. Take any reports of problems with 15 and let's get them fixed. And now we're moving on to nailing down more specifics. Like I say, we can say the improved connection to Vantage is a big thing. And we can say the AI assistant will make its appearance with a set of skills that you'll be able to call upon, and we'll reveal more about that as we go. And then there will be other things that we'd like to do as well. The Gaussian split realizing. One thing I want to look into is, again, this is speculative, haven't really spoken with the devs yet, is the fast caustics that Vive introduced. They are specifically for the sun and primarily for things like pools or large bodies of water. But that could be very useful as an alternative to the full, accurate, detailed caustics that we have, which, although they're fast for caustics is computationally expensive. And so, sometimes it's nice to have, it's not quite so realistic, but it'll do. And it only works for certain things like the sun and won't work for,
Yeah,
other
having
lighting.
something that's good
But
enough.
I think that would be a useful addition for our user base. So I'd like to see if it's possible to, borrow that from Vive. Obviously, we'll have to rewrite it from scratch, but we can take the knowledge and experience with it and see. As I say, I haven't spoken with the devs, so the devs will kill me now for mentioning that. People expect it now. But we're looking into that as well. And other things that I will leave off the table until I've had a bit more time to see where we're going to go.
Cool. And one thing that I've always wanted to ask is when the devs and when you guys are designing the roadmap for Corona, do you take into account, of course, people make all sorts of requests, right? We want this, we want that. But do you guys take into account the fact that sometimes a feature means a very complicated new workflow and that people might not be ready to use at this point? Because I've heard people saying that, you know what, Corona is now much harder to use than it was before. And that's because you have new tools that are more complicated to set. For example, you can't have like a car paint material if you don't have the option to choose the granularity of the sprinkles or whatever. So do you guys take that into account when you're designing the roadmap?
We do as much as we can. So it's an art, not a science. When people request things, there's lots of things that we take into account. How many people asked for it is an obvious one, because we don't want to do something that one person might think it's the best thing since sliced bread, but everybody else doesn't care. Sorry, that's going to get a lower priority than something that is. It's not going to make a massive difference to your workflow, but it's a little bit of a speed up, and 60 people care, and we know it's going to affect you 20 times a day. So even though it only saves you 30 seconds, when it saves you 30 seconds 20 times a day across 6 months, that's huge. So there's all this balancing that goes on, and that does include the question of, first of all, will this do what the user thinks it will? And we've spoken about that with GPU rendering, but that also occurs on a smaller level with some of these things. It's like, we could do it, but it'd be very hard, and I don't think it's actually what they expect. It's not going to do what they expect it's going to do. And so therefore we'll try and tell them that it's not going to do what you think, and it would be very difficult to get there. Because obviously we have to assess, is this going to take us all of our time for 6 months to do this one thing? Versus, can we do it in a week, 2 weeks? And, and therefore we'll have 20 things done over the 6 months, and we balance that as well. And it is a question of, okay, this is actually going to be fairly complicated to use, but it's worth it. And we do try and factor that in as well. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and as I say, I wish it was a hard science, but it's kind of an art where you have to try and balance all these different. We have a very old blog post about it. I think it's still out there on what goes into deciding what's next, and it's never easy.
But you gave a very good example. The quick caustics
Yeah.
that Ray has. Like, I'm pretty sure that 5% of people used to add caustics to their scenes before that, and now I can easily see at least 50% of people using caustics on a daily basis,
Yeah.
just because it's better and easier and faster, and it's good enough. So like, I don't need to like control the amount of photons that go into the scene from that particular light and everything, and it does look good. So I think that as I said, it's actually an art form in itself. It's not a like rocket
and it won't
science.
won't solve everything. It is primarily, it's only the sun. It won't work for other light sources, and it's primarily for bodies of water. But that's a lot of cases. People like to have pools in the hotel windows or whatever. So yeah, if you're doing like the inside of a bar with glass bottles and you want all these different spotlights and the caustics that's not going to be covered by this, but that's okay. We've got you covered. You're talking about something that's intensive and has to look real. And right now, I think a lot of people might end up faking it with, the old animated texture that's just ripply light. You just generate and you put that on the pool floor. You project it on there, and it's totally nothing to do with the movement of the water at all. And that's the kind of the quick hack just now. And so the quick caustic sits somewhere in between that and ultimate reality, and it just gives you the other range of choice. I can do the very quick hack. I can do this one that's fairly realistic, or I can do this one that's completely realistic. And yeah, I think it's good to have those choices as to how much
having options
time
is always a good thing.
Yes, the time
Definitely.
you're going to invest into the rendering. You can balance it between how important is ultimate realism in this case, because sometimes it is.
All right. So, guys, we're reaching 1 hour on this live, so I'd say it's time for us to wrap up. I'd like to thank you all for being here during this the stream, and of course, thank you, Tom, for being such a gentleman as you usually are. And again, thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and yeah, thank you everybody for coming along. I hope you found it interesting, inspirational, and yeah, I just talk too much, and so the hour just goes by super fast for me. I hope it has for everybody else too, and everybody's not sat there going, "Oh, she shut up." And hopefully we'll do it again soon, because maybe it's left you with some questions. And yeah, you feel free to reach out. I'm on social media and everything. The CGconnect group, you can post questions in there. And you don't need to wait for the next live AMA. I'm always happy to hear from folks.
Yes, and as Tom mentioned, you can always come to CGconnect.com. You can come to our Discord server, so you can find a lot of you guys are there, right? We're all there, so if you want to talk, we're always here. Again, thank you so much, everybody, and we'll be seeing you in the next AMA session with Mr. Tom Grimes.
See y'all.
See y'all.